The dog had not eaten in 3 days. The staff at the shelter knew this because they kept records, and the record for Kennel 7 was a column of small red marks, one for each meal she had refused, one for each time someone had slid a bowl through the slot in the door and found it untouched hours later. 3 days, 12 meals, and the 6 puppies pressed against her belly were beginning to look the way puppies look when they are running out of time. Not well, not with any enthusiasm, but enough. She had arrived 6 weeks earlier in the back of an animal control truck, found alongside a rural highway with no tags, no chip, no explanation, pregnant, thin in the way that meant months, not weeks, but she had eaten. She had let the puppies nurse. She had done what mothers do, mechanically, without joy. The way someone goes through the motions of living when the reason for it has gone somewhere they cannot follow. And then, 3 days ago, something changed, and no one could say what. She had seen dogs shut down after trauma. She had seen mothers stop nursing. She had seen animals simply decide, in whatever language animals decide things, that they were done. But this dog was different in a way she could not put language to, and that bothered her more than the situation itself. What bothered her was the way the dog watched the door, not the kennel door in front of her, the exterior door that led to the parking lot. She watched it with a kind of focused stillness that Petra had only seen in dogs that were waiting for someone specific, not something, someone, and the waiting had become indistinguishable from grief. Petra would think about that later. But that morning, what she was thinking was practical. If this dog did not eat today, and if those puppies did not start showing improvement by tomorrow, she was going to have to make calls she did not want to make. She did not know what he had driven 4 hours to get here, or what had kept him awake the night before, or what the phone call had said that made him leave before dawn without telling anyone where he was going. He wore civilian clothes, the way some veterans wear civilian clothes, like a disguise that almost worked. He was not in crisis. He wanted to be clear about that, though he was not sure who he was being clear to. He was functional. He had an apartment. He had a truck. He had a job driving long haul 3 weeks out of 4, which suited him because the cab of a truck was the right size for what he had become. And the road asked nothing of him except that he keep his eyes forward and his hands on the wheel. He had tried other things first. He had tried a desk job at a logistics company in 2017. About quarterly projections made him feel like he was being pressed. He had tried a construction crew, physical and outdoor and purposeful, and eventually told him with great gentleness that she could not be both the person who loved him and the only person he allowed to know him. He had understood that. He had told her so. He had watched her leave from the window of his apartment and then stood in the kitchen for a long time with his hand on the counter. The truck had been the solution that worked because it was not a solution at all, just a management strategy. You could not solve the problem of being a certain kind of person in a world that had no good use for that person anymore. The long-haul routes put him through landscapes at night where nothing was asked of him, where the darkness outside the windshield was complete and unthreatening, where he could think or not think as the miles required. He listened to history podcasts sometimes, all of it the same kind of human longing in different arrangements of chords. What he did not have was anything he would have called a reason to stop. That was not suicidal thinking. He knew what suicidal thinking was, had sat in enough group rooms to recognize it. It was more like the feeling of a car engine idling in a driveway, running, technically, going nowhere. He had gotten the phone call 2 nights ago from a woman named Loretta. "I know this is strange, but I need you to hear me out." He had said, "Go ahead." She had told him what she knew about where the dog had come from, and the part she suspected, and the part that she could not prove but believed down to her bones. When she finished, Barrett had been quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What shelter?" He did not sleep that night. He lay on his back in his apartment with the lights off and stared at the ceiling. He parked in the Harlan County Animal Shelter lot at 6:47 in the morning, which was before the shelter opened at 8. He sat in the truck with the engine off. He did not know exactly what he was doing there, what he expected to happen, what he was going to say when someone finally came to unlock the front door. He was not a man who usually acted without a plan, and he did not have a plan. He had only the phone call and the long drive and a feeling in his chest that he had not felt in years. Something that was not quite urgency, but was close to it. Something that pulled rather than pushed. At 7:55, a woman in a gray fleece vest came around the side of the building with keys in her hand. She saw him sitting in the truck and paused, the way you pause when something doesn't quite fit the morning. He got out, told her his name, said he had driven from Knoxville, and that he knew she wasn't open yet. Petra Dunham looked at him for a moment in the thin morning light. She said, "Come inside." She took him to Kennel 7 without explaining everything first, because sometimes you have to show people before you can tell them. The dog was at the back of the kennel when they arrived. She was lying on her side, the puppies distributed around her in the loose, boneless way of young things not yet sure of their bodies. She was a medium-sized dog with the build of a border collie mix. Her ribs were visible in a way that made the breath catch. She did not look up when Petra stopped in front of the kennel gate. But when Garrett stepped forward, something happened. He had not made a sound. He had not called to her or made any noise at all. He had simply moved to stand in front of the kennel, and the dog's head came up. Not slowly, not cautiously. It came up the way a head comes up when you hear a sound you thought you would never hear again. She looked at him. Petra, standing 6 feet back, would later describe it as the most unsettling thing she had witnessed in 14 years. Not frightening, unsettling. The distinction mattered. It was the look of recognition, pure and unambiguous, directed at a man this dog had never seen before. Garrett was very still. The dog did not growl. She did not lower her head. The person whose smell means safety, whose footstep on the porch means the day can begin. She looked at him like he was the answer to a question she had been asking for a long time. Then she stood up, for the first time in 3 days, and walked to the front of the kennel. Petra's hand went to her mouth. The way you move around an animal that has been hurt and might still hurt you. And the dog pressed her nose through the chain link and touched his hand. Just touched it, the way dogs do when they are checking if you are real. When they are making sure. He said, "Hey," to her softly. Just that, and the dog sat down, like she had been waiting for permission. Loretta's phone call had started with a woman named Avery Cross. Avery Cross had been 26 years old, a Marine Corps veteran, a canine handler who had completed 2 deployments and come home with her service dog, a Belgian Malinois named Ranger, and a medical discharge that she had not expected and had not, in the months after, known what to do with. That part Garrett knew. He had served with Avery for part of his second tour. Ranger had been extraordinary. Everyone who worked with that team said so. Ranger had an instinct for things that couldn't be explained in training manuals. And Avery had an instinct for Ranger, and together, they were one of those pairings that made you believe in something larger than training. When she came home, the discharge hit her harder than the deployments had. The wars ended for other people first. You came home to an ordinary life that did not have room for the person the war had made you, and you stood there in your own living room, feeling like you were taking up too much space. Garrett had lost track of her in the way that happens. He had his own transition to manage, his own version of the same silence. They exchanged a few messages in 2020, then nothing. Loretta had tracked her history from discharge records and rescue network contacts. Avery had moved to rural Tennessee. She had gotten work on and off, mostly outdoor, mostly physical. She had acquired the dog, not Ranger, Ranger had gone to another handler when she separated, but a dog of her own, Mercy. The farm situation had been bad enough that the county had been called. 4 dogs in a wire pen with no shelter, mid-January, water bowls frozen solid, a litter of puppies that had not all survived the cold. Avery had been doing fence work on an adjacent property when she heard the sound and went over the fence without asking permission. She had loaded the surviving adult dogs into her truck, called the rescue network herself, and handed them off to Loretta's contacts that same evening. All except the one who was clearly pregnant and clearly terrified and had bitten Avery on the forearm before deciding, for reasons that remained opaque, to accept her. Avery had taken her home in the cab of the truck, with a bandage on her arm and her jaw set in a way that she had named her Mercy because Avery told Loretta once over the phone that's what the dog was owed. They had been together 2 years when the accident happened. November, a Tuesday morning, a road that was wrong for the conditions. And then, 8 months ago, Avery had been killed. Not in combat. Not overseas. On a Tuesday morning in November, on a 2-lane road outside of a small town, in the kind of accident that has no drama to it. A neighbor had taken Mercy in, but the neighbor had 3 other animals and a small property and could not manage the pregnancy. Garrett did not cry when Loretta told him this. He did not cry easily, but he sat in his apartment after the call ended, and he held the phone in both hands, and he thought about Avery Cross, the way you think about someone you did not know well enough. He thought about what it meant that her dog had been waiting. He was not a superstitious man. He would have told you that, clearly, without hesitation. He did not believe in signs or messages, or the idea that the dead sent things across the distance. But he sat in his apartment at 3 in the morning, and he thought about a dog named Mercy. Avery had trusted him once. In a place very far away, in circumstances that left marks on people, she had trusted him to cover ground she couldn't cover, to make decisions she didn't have time to make. He had done that. Maybe that was what he was thinking about when he got up and put on his jacket and drove 4 hours in the dark. The shelter opened at 8. By 8:15, Garrett was sitting on the floor of the corridor outside Kennel 7, his back against the wall, and Mercy had moved to that side of the kennel and was lying with her face close to the chain link, had gotten separated from the others, and was making a sound that was barely a sound, more like a vibration. Garrett watched this. Petra came back around 9 with a bowl of food, set it inside the kennel door the way she had been doing for 3 days, and waited. Mercy got up, walked to the bowl, and ate. Petra had to turn away for a moment. Specifically in that moment, that undid something in the back of her throat. When she turned back, Garrett was watching Mercy eat with an expression she could not name. It was not relief, not quite, though it was close. He said he was thinking about the difference between surviving and waiting. He said he thought maybe those were not always 2 different things. Garrett spent the rest of that day at the shelter. He helped with morning rounds, not because anyone asked him to, but because Petra did not send him away, and he did not know what to do with himself elsewhere. He cleaned water bowls. He moved supplies from the back of a delivery truck. He sat with a terrier mix in Kennel 2, who had been cowering at the back of his space for the better part of a week, and who, by noon, had moved close enough to sniff Garrett's hand through the wire. Between tasks, he kept coming back to Kennel 7. Mercy had eaten twice by the afternoon. The puppies had nursed, all 6 of them, and the small one with the white patch had gotten himself positioned properly and was making less of that barely there sound. Something in the kennel had shifted the way a room shifts when the weather changes outside, a pressure adjustment, an easing. Mercy watched Garrett each time he passed. She did not bark, did not throw herself at the door, did not perform the anxious eagerness of a shelter dog hoping for a walk. She watched him with that same steady attentiveness, the one that made Petra keep glancing between them, trying to articulate to herself what she was witnessing. Petra sat down with Garrett in the small office off the main corridor and asked him what he was planning to do. He said he did not know. She told him about the rescue network, about the foster families that might take Mercy and the puppies, about the timeline and what it meant for the litter. She told him that Mercy was going to need significant rehabilitation, that she was not a dog who would go easily into a new home, that whoever took her on was taking on something real. He asked about the process for adoption. Petra looked at him. He said, the dog and the puppies. All of them, if that's an option. She said it was going to take time. Background checks, home visit, the puppies would need to be old enough. He said, I understand what I'm signing up for. And that he did not think this was irrational. Then she opened a drawer and took out the paperwork. The collar was in a plastic bag in the office, logged as found property. Petra had almost forgotten to mention it. A standard nylon collar, navy blue, worn to the softness of old cloth. On it, a small metal tag, the kind you get engraved at a pet store, the letters pressed deep into the aluminum. On one side, Mercy. On the other side, a phone number and a name. Avery Cross. Garrett held the bag in his hands for a long moment. He did not open it. He did not need to see it more clearly. He could read the name through the plastic, and that was enough. The collar was just a collar to them. A logged item in a plastic bag. He thought about how many things in this world are just a logged item in a plastic bag to someone, and the whole story of a life to someone else. He set the bag carefully on the desk. He said, I'm going to need to find a bigger apartment. The next weeks were not simple. That the paperwork would be started, that Petra had his number and would call if anything changed with the puppies. He drove home in the dark, the way he had driven there, but differently, the same road in a different direction with a different weight to it. She said, what are you going to do about the apartment? He said he was working on it. He put in calls on 3 different properties the next morning. He found a rental house 20 minutes outside the city, a place with a yard that backed up to a tree line, where the landlord had dogs himself and was willing to discuss the situation. He had driven the route twice in his head before he called. He told the long-haul company he was going to need to restructure his schedule. They were not enthusiastic about this. He told them it was not a negotiation. He drove local for a while. He adjusted. Mercy heard the truck in the parking lot before he was out of it. Petra would tell him this later, that the dog had been alert and watching the corridor door from the moment the gravel shifted outside, long before any human in the building was aware of anyone arriving. When he came through the door, she was at the front of the kennel. He knelt again on the concrete floor, the same as the first time, and she pressed her nose through the chain link and touched his hand. He said, I got a yard. She looked at him with those dark, steady eyes. He stayed all day. He sat with Mercy for long stretches, not trying to do anything, not training, not coaxing, just being present in the particular way that presence matters to dogs, the way proximity has its own language. By the end of the afternoon, he was sitting just inside the kennel door, and Mercy had moved close enough to rest her chin on his knee. The puppies swarmed around his boots. The small one with the white patch over his eye climbed directly onto his foot and went to sleep there. He did not move his foot. And the Saturday after that, though that one did not go as planned. He arrived at the shelter to find Petra in the corridor outside Kennel 7, with a look he recognized from faces in very different contexts. It had started Wednesday. A shelter volunteer had noticed during the afternoon feeding that he was not nursing the way he should, that he was listless in a way distinct from normal puppy sleep, that his temperature was wrong when Petra checked it. The vet who worked with the shelter part-time had come Thursday, assessed him, started him on supportive care. Garrett stood in front of the kennel and looked at the puppy, who was separated now in a small warming box with a heat lamp, still breathing, but barely investing in it. Mercy kept moving between the other 5 puppies and the side of the kennel nearest the warming box, her nose reading the air, her whole body tuned to the frequency of something she was trying to understand. He asked Petra what needed to be done. She said the puppy needed to be fed by syringe every 2 hours. She said the shelter's overnight staff was 2 people covering the whole facility, and they were doing what they could. She did not say they were stretched, but her face said it. He said, "I can stay tonight." Petra looked at him. She said, "That's a long time." He said, "I don't have anywhere to be." He slept in the office that night in increments of 90 minutes. He had been so careful with himself for so long. Careful in the sense of keeping everything at a manageable distance. This was the opposite of that. This was close and specific, and it asked everything of his attention. The angle of the head, the way the body oriented toward the warmth of Garrett's hand. A shift of a few degrees in the right direction, the kind of thing only someone who has been watching for hours would notice. He noted it. He recorded it in the log, the way he had been taught to record things, time and observation, and no embellishment. Against something for a long time. Mercy had moved to the corner of the kennel nearest the warming box. She was lying with her chin on the concrete, her eyes on the puppy, her breathing slow and even. Garrett looked at her. She looked back. He thought about how much of keeping something alive was simply refusing to leave. By morning, the puppy had stabilized enough that the part-time vet, arriving at 7, said cautiously that the direction had changed. A kind that comes from having been fully used. The adoption was finalized 6 weeks later, when the puppies were old enough to be cleared, and the drive had stopped feeling like a drive and started feeling like a commute, which he understood to mean something. He found homes for 5 of the puppies through Loretta's rescue network. Each placement was vetted carefully, not anxiously, but thoroughly, the way you do a job you mean to do correctly. Loretta said she had never seen an adopter so specific about match quality. He said he figured if you were going to do something, you should do it right. The small one with the white patch he kept. He let them out into the yard in the afternoon and stood at the back door and watched them. The sense that nothing was wasted. He stood in the door and watched her work the yard, and he thought about the things that don't get said between people who think they have more time than they do. He thought about the message he hadn't sent in 2021 because he didn't know what to say, and the one after that, and the one after that. He thought about the gap between people who have been through the same fires and still managed to drift apart. Mercy came back across the yard toward the house. She stopped at the bottom of the back steps and looked up at him. He pushed the door open wider. She came inside. He did not know, at that moment, how much would change in the year that followed. He did not know that Mercy would turn out to have an instinct for his worst nights, without a cue, without a signal, without anything except whatever it is that animals know about the human nervous system when it is running too hot. He did not know that having a creature who depended on him would change the equation in ways that years of trying had not changed it. Not because dependence obligates, but because it orients. You wake up. You go through the door. You are here, and so is this animal, and that is enough to start a day. Not without interruption, but sleeping, which was more than he had done in years. He did not know about the morning 6 months later when he would be standing at the kitchen sink, the feeling of being located in a particular place at a particular time and having that be sufficient. He had not felt located in years. He had been moving through space, functional and present in the technical sense, but untethered from any given point. The yard and the dog in it, and the coffee getting cold in his hand, and the light coming flat across the tree line in the early hour, that was location, that was specific. That asked him to be exactly here, and he was. He did not know that he would call Priya that spring, not to ask for anything, just to say that he was sorry, It had taken him so long to understand what she had been telling him, and that he hoped she was well. She was. She had married someone in 2022, a man who sounded, from her description, uncomplicated in the best sense of the word, and she sounded happy, genuinely happy, and he held that fact gently. Service dogs or therapy dogs that came into the meetings sometimes because he had an idea. He started driving Mercy and Cross to those meetings on Thursday evenings. The veterans in those rooms had the same vocabulary he had. Some of those men and women had not touched a dog in years. Some of them had not let anything that close. By the third meeting, one of them had adopted a dog from Loretta's network. He did not know that he would eventually help Loretta place 17 dogs in veteran households in the first year alone. That this would become a thing he did, the way some people do things they never planned. He did not know any of that yet. What he knew, standing in the back door of a rented house in the late afternoon, was that Mercy had come inside and was standing in the kitchen looking at him with a calm, assessing steadiness, waiting for him to show her what came next. She walked to it, drank. Cross made 3 unsteady circles near the back door, and then lay down on the threshold, half in and half out, undecided about the inside world, but not quite willing to leave the outside one. The sound of an occupied space, the particular quiet that is not silence but company. He thought about Avery Cross. He thought about her in the way that you think about people who shaped you without announcing it, who were present in your life for a short window and left a watermark that you only notice later when the light changes. He thought about how you could know someone in a specific and narrow context, in the compressed and clarifying circumstances of a deployment, and believe you knew them, and still have so much that never got said. He thought about what it meant that her dog had waited. He did not have an answer to that. Mercy walked over and stood near him, then lay down at his side, her body warm against his leg. Cross continued to occupy the threshold, in and out, steady, present. He stayed there until the light was gone. Somewhere in East Tennessee, in a shelter that smells like all shelters, in a corridor that leads to an exterior door with a parking lot beyond it, there is a kennel that is clean and empty now. The record in the logbook will remain, a column of small red marks for 12 refused meals, and then a single notation in different ink, where someone wrote 8 today and underlined it. No one will underline it because it is a miracle. Because a dog named Mercy, who had survived everything Avery Cross had survived and loved her through all of it, had been waiting for someone to show up, and he did. That was all. That was everything.